Welcome back to the deep dive. So you sent us a fascinating stack of sources. They're dense, they're technical, mostly focused on Theravada Buddhist philosophy.
Specifically the Abhidhamma tradition and drawing a lot from scholarship out of Myanmar.
Exactly. And we dove straight in. So today's mission, it's not abstract philosophy. It feels more like forensic spiritual mechanics.
That's a great way to put it.
We're tackling the precise moment of physical death, what's known as marana, and really trying to unpack what actually stops.
Right. What are the technical specifications?
Yes. We want to know, what is that final thought process? And maybe most importantly, what are those fundamental components, the life force, ayu, the heat, usma, and consciousness, vinya, that dissolve and mark the end of one life?
It's really an exercise in looking at impermanence through, well, an incredibly powerful microscope.
It is a very different framework than what many of us are used to.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's an essential distinction to make right at the start. The Western tradition, it tends to view death as this absolute endpoint, a full stop.
The end of the story.
Exactly. But the sources we're looking at, they reject that idea completely. For you, the listener, the framework here sees death not as an end, but as just one stage in a continuous process.
And that whole process is rooted in one core principle.
Impermanence, Annika. That's the foundation for everything we're about to discuss. If everything is always changing, always dissolving, then death is simply the most dramatic transition point in that stream.
Okay, so let's unpack that term you mentioned, Maran. It's the Pali and Sanskrit word for death. But it's not that simple, is it?
No, not at all. The scholarship, especially the Abhidhamma, uses it in two really distinct ways. There's the conventional, everyday meaning, and then there's the ultimate, absolute truth of it.
Let's start with the one we all think we know. Definition 1, physical death, the end of a life.
This is the one we see, the one we mourn, and it has a very specific place in the doctrine.
Right, it's the 12th link in the chain of dependent origination, the Pakkasamuppada.
Which is that huge cycle of cause and effect that, keeps us in the loop of rebirth. And when you dig into the sources, they give these 3-layered definitions for what physical death actually is.
They get more and more detailed.
Precisely. The first one sounds almost deceptively simple. Death is the cutting off of the life faculty.
Okay, so straight away, it establishes this life faculty, ayu, as the thing that defines being alive.
Yes. Then the second definition refines that a little. It calls death the interruption of the life faculty, but specifically within the limits of a single existence, a single becoming.
So even if the energy continues, the unique configuration of this particular lifetime is over. It's done.
That chapter is closed, and then you get to the third definition, which is just this comprehensive checklist for what stops.
It's powerful. It calls death the departing, the vanishing, destruction, disappearance, the completion of the lifespan.
The dissolution of the 5 aggregates, the khandhas.
The discarding of the body, and critically, the destruction of the physical life force.
And that list is so fascinating because it gives us a preview of those 3 elements we're going to get into. I mean, think about why that matters. In modern medicine, we look for, what? A lack of brain activity, no pulse.
Right, biological markers.
But this Buddhist analysis defines death by the destruction of the core sustaining factors. When those 5 aggregates form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, when their functional relationship collapses, that's physical death.
It's a total system failure, not just one part breaking down.
A holistic structural collapse.
Right.
And that idea of the sustaining factors ceasing, it leads us perfectly into the second, much more abstract definition of Maran.
Momentary death, the continuous process. This is the one that really messes with your head.
It does. This is the Abhidhamma perspective, which is always looking at ultimate reality, not just conventional stories. And in this sense, death is happening constantly.
Why? Because every single moment, every thought, every sensation, it dies the instant it arises, just to be replaced by the next one.
Which brings us right back to Annika. Impermanence. The fundamental reality of existence is flow, not solidity. Every second, every atom in your body is dying and being reborn. Physical death is just the final big-ticket version of a process that never, ever stops.
So if everything is constantly dying, we have to talk about continuity.
Yeah.
How does anything carry on?
Right. And the sources argue that change doesn't mean annihilation. There's an analogy to chemistry. You can have water as solid ice, then liquid, then vapor. The form changes, but the underlying material isn't destroyed.
Its configuration is just different.
Exactly. The particular energies continue, just in a new form. This means there can never be an actual gap. There's no void between one state and the next.
So there's no pause between one life ending and the next one beginning.
None. The sources have this beautiful, poetic way of putting it. Death in one place means birth in another, just like the sun setting here means it's rising somewhere else on Earth.
There's no time when the sun is just off.
Never. There's only a continuous change of perspective. The consciousness stream, after the final moment in this body, immediately becomes the first moment of consciousness in the next configuration. The break is in the physical location, not in the stream itself.
This idea of momentary death, it just completely dismantles our sense of a stable, continuous self.
Yeah.
So let's zoom in on that. Let's get technical. If life is just this constant flow, how long does a life actually last in the ultimate sense?
In the absolute sense, according to the Abhidhamma, life lasts only for the duration of a single, unbelievably brief moment of consciousness.
And to help us grasp that speed, the scholarship gives us this fantastic analogy, the cartwheel analogy. I think we have to walk through this.
It's essential. Imagine a huge, heavy cartwheel. It doesn't matter if it's rolling down a hill or just sitting still. At any given instant, it's only touching the ground on a single tiny point of its rim.
Never 2 points at once.
Never. And the sources map that directly onto life. The life of a being, it says, lasts only for that single moment of consciousness, the point touching the ground right now. As soon as that moment ceases, the being, that particular mind-body combination, ceases.
So the you from 1 second ago is literally completely dead, and the you of the next second hasn't been born yet.
That's the implication. It annihilates the idea of a self that lasts for 5 minutes, let alone 80 years. You are only the present point.
Okay, let's get even more technical. We have to talk about the momentary lifespan, this lesser moment, as it's called.
Right. This is the smallest unit of time imaginable, and each one has 3 distinct phases. Arising, which is apada, presence or hiti, and dissolution.
Arising, standing, and vanishing.
And this is happening constantly, instantaneously. It is the definition of impermanence in action. These little moments then combine to form a slightly larger unit, the thought unit, or sita,
And a single thought unit has a lifespan called a thought movement.
which also goes through those same 3 phases.
Okay, let's try to anchor this in something physical, because the numbers here are just mind-bending. How does a thought movement compare to something we think of as tiny but durable, like an atom?
The comparison is breathtaking. The sources state that the duration of a single physical atom, or rupa, is generally equivalent to the lifespan of 17 thought movements.
Wait, 17?
17. So think about what that means. Before a single physical particle has completed its own life cycle, 17 separate consciousnesses, 17 births, 17 deaths have already flashed through existence.
I can't even process that speed. We're talking about a time scale smaller than picoseconds. It's almost purely conceptual.
It is. And the analysis gets even finer when you look at the static period of these components. The material components, the rupa, are considered to have a slightly longer period of, well, stability compared to the consciousness flashing through them.
This is where we get those numbers, the 7, the 49. Can you walk us through how the Abhidhamma breaks down the physical side?
I can try. So within that one atomic duration, that span of 17 thought movements, the physical matter itself is said to have a lifespan of 63 of those lesser moments we talked about.
63 tiny sub-moments inside the lifespan of one atom.
Right. And it's broken down like this. 7 lesser moments for the arising phase of the matter, then a much longer static period of 49 lesser moments, and finally, 7 lesser moments for the ceasing or dissolution phase.
7 plus 49 plus 7. 63. So the physical stuff is considered to be standing still for a relatively long time.
Well, consciousness just races through it, but the ultimate conclusion is the same. This constant microscale dissolution is reality. Momentary death is just the repeated vanishing of each physical mental combination. This rising and ceasing goes on until that final physical death moment.
Which is just the point where the whole stream finds a new place to start manifesting again.
Exactly. The cartwheel finds a new patch of road.
That sets the stage perfectly for our central question. We know life is a constant series of micro-deaths. But when that final conventional death happens, what are the specific life-sustaining factors in this body that finally give out? Let's talk about Ayu, Usma, and Vinya.
These 3 are the pillars. The canonical explanations are so precise about them because, for a meditator, these are the things you analyze in your own existence. When they dissolve, this life is over.
Okay, let's start with element 1. Ayu, the life faculty, or life force. The sources describe it as a protective or maintenance factor, right?
Yes, you can think of IU as the kinetic energy. It's the physical life force that protects and maintains the whole body-mind complex. It's the engine.
So at the moment of death, that engine just runs out of fuel for this specific journey.
It's interrupted, destroyed, and without IU, the physical matter, the rupa, can't maintain its living form anymore.
Which naturally leads to the second element. If the engine stops, it stops generating heat. This gets to the question about usma, which is heat, by focusing on element 2, the teho element, or kama-produced body heat.
Right. Teho is the fire element, which manifests as usma or heat, but the nuance here is absolutely critical, and the sources really emphasize it. It's not that all heat ceases.
What does that mean?
Well, if a candle is burning next to a body, the heat from the candle doesn't just vanish. What specifically stops is the teho element that was produced by kama.
So self-generating, life-sustaining body heat.
That's the one. The heat, that's an expression of that individual's accumulated karmic energy. So you might still feel some residual warmth on a body right after death.
But the active process, the thing keeping the systems running, has shut off.
Exactly. The heat produced before death might still be present for a short time, but the kama fuel generator has stopped. That's the difference. Once that's gone, decay begins almost immediately.
And finally, element 3, vinyata, consciousness. Life force is gone, the internal heat is gone, so the mind stream has to stop its current operation.
It has to. Any consciousness that was maintaining the continuity of the mind stream in this specific life comes to a full stop. But we have to be specific about which consciousness because we know it's all momentary anyway.
We're talking about the 3 types of life consciousness that sustain the stream.
Yes. The 3 are so interconnected, they're said to have an identical object. First, there's the rebirth linking consciousness, Pahaisandi. That's the very first moment of consciousness in a new life.
The spark that connects to the previous one.
Then you have the life continuum consciousness, or Havanga. This is the subconscious stream that runs in the background, maintaining your sense of identity when you're not actively thinking or sensing something. It's the mind's default state.
And the third.
The third is the death consciousness, Kuti. The mind stream, which is mostly Kavanga, just keeps flowing until the very final Kuti Siddha, or death thought moment, arises. That is the last flicker of consciousness in one life.
And its energy immediately propels the Paikisandi of the next life.
Instantly. No gap. So Ayu, Usma, and this particular stream of Inya all cease simultaneously, and the transition happens in that same moment.
But that final moment, that Kudisita, doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's the end result of a very specific process.
It is. It's the culmination of a decisive stream of thought that happens in the seconds leading up to physical death. This is the near-death process, the Marana Sanaviti.
The dying moment. Okay, let's unpack that sequence. What triggers this final mental process?
As the body fails, as Ayu and Usma weaken, the mind door sort of swings wide open to the person's accumulated kama. This final mental stream arises, and it grabs onto an object, something seen, heard, or remembered.
And the sources say it's like a vivid dream or a hallucination.
Exactly. It appears in the mind door, and crucially, the mind sinks into it, either with wholesome or unwholesome attachment. If the object is unwholesome, a bad memory, the mind can become agitated, filled with fear.
Whereas if it's wholesome, there might be a feeling of peace.
The sense of serenity, yes. And that final mental state, the volition that arises in that stream, is what generates the energy for the next birth. It's the final critical snapshot that dictates the path forward.
So it can potentially override a lifetime of habits if that final thought is powerful enough.
It can.
Yeah.
Now let's get technical about the flow. This process involves a specific number of thought moments. It starts when a karmic object appears at one of the 6 doors, the senses or the mind.
The adverting consciousness picks it up.
Correct. The mind simply directs itself to the object. That's immediately followed by a rapid stream of consciousness called the jhavanas, the impulsion moments.
And in ordinary life, these jhavanas are where we create new kama, right? They usually flash 7 times.
7 times, yes. They are the psychological actors. But at the dying moment, the whole structure changes. The physical body, the rupa is failing, the life force is almost gone.
So how does that affect the stream?
This is a critical point in the Myanmar scholarship. Because the physical base is so weak, the jhavanas can't sustain their full power. They only function 5 times.
2 less than usual.
Right. And these are known as the weakened impulsion moments. They're weaker because the physical hardware just can't support the full stream of volition anymore.
5 weakened moments. And what happens immediately after those 5?
The death consciousness, the Kudasita, arises immediately after those 5 moments. And with that, Existence in this particular life is concluded. The mind has run its course.
But the energy from those 5 moments isn't lost.
Not at all. Their volition, as weak as it is, instantly directs the mind to that object they were processing, and that object becomes the foundation for the very first consciousness of the next life. The end and the beginning are linked by the energy of those 5 final thoughts.
Which makes perfect sense. If the Marasanaviti is the machinery, then it needs some kind of fuel, some raw material to process.
And that material comes in the form of these objects called nimitta, or signs. This is where we see the quality of the coming rebirth.
Okay, so at this point, our karmic history basically comes forward and presents itself at the doors of the mind.
Yes. And the quality of these objects, wholesome, unwholesome, or neutral, determines the karmic trajectory. There are 3 main types of signs that can appear.
Let's start with the first one. Sign 1. Kama. The action itself.
This is the purest form. It's a direct recollection of a powerful act, wholesome or unwholesome. It's a memory, so it only manifests in the mind door, internally.
And the sources say this memory can be so powerful it overshadows the thought process.
Yes, even if the person is unconscious. The pure spiritual energy of that past act is being processed, whether it was an act of intense meditation or, terrible crime.
So they could be internally reliving this profound moment, even if they can't show it on the outside.
Precisely. And that leads to the second sign, which is a bit more sensory. Sign 2, Kama Nimitta, the sign of the Kama.
So this isn't the act itself, but the objects or the environment around the act.
You've got it. It's the sensory data. So, for example, a virtuous doctor might see the faces of patients they helped. A devout person might see a Buddha image or hear chanting.
And on the flip side,
someone could see the weapon they used in an assault or the animal they hunted. It's the concrete, visceral echo of their moral history.
And the final sign is maybe the most dramatic. Sign 3. Gati Nimitta, the sign of destination.
This one is directly predictive. It's basically an advance briefing of the realm of rebirth. The body is still here, but the mind is already seeing the gateway to the next life.
The examples are so vivid. For an unwholesome destination, the person might see some ugly ogre approaching and calling their name,
causing them to shout, "Save me!" or thrash around. But the crucial detail is nobody else in the room can see it. It's a private manifestation for the dying mind.
And for a wholesome destination,
they might see a beautiful mansion, a heavenly landscape, a red carpet leading up into the sky. It's a sign that they're headed for a higher realm.
It's the sheer power of that final recollection that is so important. The sources seem to say that the memory that is most vivid right at the end can be disproportionately influential.
It can override a lifetime of habit. It's the strength of the volition in those 5 weakened javanas that steers the ship. A good person who recalls one bad act with intense remorse at the very end could be propelled to a difficult birth.
And the reverse is also true.
The reverse is also true. It really highlights why training the mind for tranquility and awareness throughout life is so critical.
All of this incredible detail about the mechanics of dying, it has to be for a reason. It must be for some practical application.
Of course. The goal isn't just to study death academically, it's to use this knowledge to live better. And that brings us to the formal practice of mindfulness of death, or Marangsasati.
This is one of the foundational practices, isn't it? The 7th of the 10 recollections.
It is, and it's designed to directly counter our biggest delusion, that we have plenty of time. The practice involves constantly bearing in mind the countless ways death can arrive. An accident, an illness, a snake bite.
Anything, at any time. The goal is just to hold that awareness constantly.
Right. If you genuinely know you might die in the next 5 minutes, your motivation to cultivate wholesome states of mind, well, it increases dramatically.
But the sources warn about how you do this practice. It requires a lot of discipline.
It does. You're meant to retreat to solitude and contemplate death, but without emotional contamination. If you think about the death of someone you love, you just generate grief. If you think about the death of an enemy, you generate hatred. That's not the point.
So it has to be done without attachment, like a cremator viewing a corpse.
That's the exact analogy used. Detached, factual, looking at a universal reality. And by doing that, the emotional hindrances are suppressed, your attention gets steady, and you can reach what's called neighborhood concentration. It's that calm clarity right before deep meditation.
And to help get there, the Visuddhimagga gives these 8 specific ways to contemplate death. They're like a toolkit.
A spiritual toolkit, yes. Let's walk through them. First, you contemplate death as a murderer with a drawn sword standing right in front of you.
Not to create panic, but to create urgent vigilance.
To cut through complacency. Second, you contemplate death as the ruin of all success. All your achievements, your wealth, your power, it all ends. This cuts through greed and pride.
Third is by comparison, remembering that even the most powerful people in history were all subject to death. No one is exempt.
Fourth is a very physical one, contemplating the body as being shared with innumerable worms and tiny organisms. It's a reminder of the body's eventual decay and helps cut attachment to its beauty or vitality.
Fifth is contemplating the frailty of life. The fact that it depends on the next breath, the next meal, on all these fragile systems working together.
Sixth, as signless. This is a big one. Nobody knows when, where, or how they will die. You can't predict it, so you have to be prepared now. It cuts through procrastination.
Seventh is the limitedness of extent. Just realizing that life is short no matter how many years you get.
And eighth, this brings us full circle. Contemplating the shortness of the moment. Realizing that, in an ultimate sense, life is only one thought moment long. That's the ultimate truth of anicca.
And contemplating all of this is meant to push the practitioner towards the ultimate goal.
Which is deathlessness, amada, and ultimately nibbana. Deathlessness just means escaping the wheel of repeated births and therefore repeated deaths.
And nibbana is the highest aim, the absolute extinction of greed, hate, and delusion, deliverance from all future suffering.
The texts describe it with such reverence. Profound, hard to see, unattainable by mere reasoning. And it's often defined by what it is not. It's the unborn, unbecome, unmade, unconditioned.
And if it's unconditioned, it can't be a place that a self enters. This has to connect to the doctrine of anatta, of egolessness.
That is the crucial link. You cannot understand nibbana without grasping that there is no permanent, solid self to begin with. If a self entered it, that self would be conditioned, and so nibbana would be conditioned.
There's that incredible quote.
The deed is, but no doer of the deed is there. Nibbana is, but not the man that enters it. Deathlessness isn't some future state. It's attained by fully knowing the arising and passing of everything, moment to moment, right now. It's the property of a mind that has ceased craving.
So we started this deep dive looking for the technical specs of death. And we found that the mechanics of death are actually the mechanics of life.
They're completely inseparable. To understand Marana, you have to understand impermanence, suffering, and egolessness. Anicca, dukkha, anatta.
We tracked consciousness down to the thought moment, finding that existence is just a single point on a constantly turning wheel.
And we identified those three critical elements that cease at physical death. The life force, ayu, the karma-produced heat, usma, and the consciousness stream, vinya.
We even broke down those final moments, the Maranasanaviti, with its 5 weakened impulsion moments, processing the final signs that determine the next birth.
And the takeaway from all this rigor is a call to action, to use this knowledge to practice, because death is an inescapable cycle until one reaches the unconditioned.
So as a final thought for you to take away from this, let's consider the immediate, momentary implication of this cycle. There's a quote from the Thai forest master, Ajahn Chah. He said, "The emotion of happiness is a form of birth. The tendency to become sad is a form of death." So think about that. If grabbing onto a happy feeling is a birth, and grabbing onto a sad feeling is a death, then our whole emotional life is just this constant spinning wheel of becoming and passing away.
Moment by moment.
So what would it mean if you just practiced observing those feelings, good and bad, without attachment? Using those 8 contemplations to remember that even your feelings are impermanent. Could simply staying aware, cutting the mind free from those causes, as the sources suggest. Could that in itself be a momentary practice of the deathless state of nibbana right here, right now?
That's the ultimate application.
That's the ultimate application of understanding the dying moment.